Hi guys. All right, we are going to give a go at our first in motion figure drawing. Now, the setup is important. It doesn't make or break things, but if you set things up properly ahead of time, it becomes so much easier. So what I recommend is you take your reference photo, your image you're going to draw from, and you're going to draw on it too, and your paper, and place them directly next to each other. Get as close to the figure as you can, and then even better, if you can just tape it down so that they don't move around, it makes a lot of difference. The reason it makes a difference is because as you are doing this, you are going to be comparing back and forth between the two. You're going to be making decisions about measurements just back and forth between the two pages, and the closer you are together and the more stable your setup is, the easier this is going to be to do. Okay, now a couple other things. First, I know this seems like a lot, but I don't want you to be nervous. The last two assignments that you did are preparing you for this. This is the same thing we did in the first two assignments. We're just taking it one step further. I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to relax. I know you can do this, but if you get caught up, if you get stuck in an area, don't worry about it. It's okay. You can turn it in wherever you happen to end up, and that is totally fine. This is just a beginning. We are kind of getting a head start on things that we're going to do later. Okay, now that's it for my introductions. Let's get right to it. Now, we talked about creating the structure underneath the figure. We practiced that, and we're actually going to, I showed you in the original steps, how to do that on the image. And what I want is for you to, if you've printed off one of these pictures, or even if you've got your own, I want you to actually draw out the structure on that image, because that is going to help you a lot in making your marks when you go to draw over here. Don't try to just start drawing over here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find that line of action. Now, the line of action goes, basically from either the base of the spine or the top of the head through to create the form. Now, what you want to find is the leg that it goes to that you don't really have like a bend. Like if we were to go here, you'd have to stop at the waist, come back over here, and come down here. Now that's a line of action, but it's not a smooth one, and we want to find that smooth one. And so I'm going to just start right up here in the middle of his head. I'm going to make my mark all the way down here, coming to the inside of the foot. So that's my line of action. That's going to define my gesture. The next two things are just as important. They are the tilt of the shoulders and the tilt of the pelvic carriage, okay? That is also going to define the gesture. So I'm going to find on the picture where his shoulder, kind of the shoulder sockets would be. And I'm just going to make little circles here and here. And then I'm going to connect them across. And that shows me the tilt of the shoulders. Now it's not perfect because this one's a little bit up and this one's a little bit down, but it's pretty close. And I'm going to do the same for the waist or the pelvic area. I'm going to look for where the hip bones would be, which would be about right here, and about right there. This one's a little harder to see on it. I picked one of the more complicated ones to show you, leaving some of the more straightforward ones for you guys to do on your own. Okay, once I have these things in, I'm actually going to start drawing over here. The first thing I'm going to draw is I'm going to recreate this line as best I can. So I'm going to kind of just go across. I'm going to start here, close to the middle of my paper. I'm going to track it as it comes down and pay attention to where it curves. It curves about right here. And then coming down, it really does help. I know it seems kind of weird to have one hand on the line that I've already drawn and then the other hand doing the sketching, because it helps me sort of keep track of what I'm doing. Do you see how I can go back and forth? I'm just looking back and forth between these to make sure that my lines are at about the same angle, so I get that curve about right. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Now, like I said, this is not like a 100% foolproof way to do it, but our goal is to get as close as we can. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this shoulder. I'm going to get this shoulder in, and it's at a tilt about like this. See how I can kind of go back and forth looking at it? And I'm just going to establish it here. I can always make this line that comes up here taller or shorter as I need to. So it's not super important that I get that right. Now I'm going to show you how to check your work with this, just using 2 other pencils. I'm going to place one pencil exactly on that line here. This just makes it a little easier to see. And I'm going to place one pencil here. Then I'm going to compare them. And I think this one is tilted a little bit more strongly, which tells me that this is too strong of an angle, and I'm going to need to bring it down some. So I'm going to bring that down. The other way you can do it is just to go back and forth. Now this only works if you're set up really close to each other like this. I'm going to hold this here. Now I'm not going to move my body at all, and I'm going to keep that angle, and I'm going to come straight across to here. And then I'm going to take a look at it. And that is pretty close. It's funny, I actually went a little bit too much the other way. So that's just kind of how to check your own work. You're checking your answers there. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. What we're doing is we're just getting used to seeing these things, seeing the line of action, seeing the angles and the tilts, because these are going to become very important as you go on. And you get into the higher grades and you start doing more and more. You're going to be really glad that you have these skills. Okay, so I really like this. I feel like this is pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that for the time being. And I'm going to come back over here with my marker, and I'm going to draw out the angles of these arms. So just like I made dots where the shoulders are, I'm going to make a dot where the elbow is, and a dot where the wrist is. Now we have some foreshortening here. We're not really going to get into foreshortening specifically, but that's when the body is coming towards you as opposed to seeing it as a flat angle, which is why this looks shorter and the hand looks larger. So right now, I just want you to be careful that you keep it at those lengths, because that is the foreshortening. So another dot at the elbow, coming through, another dot at the wrist, coming through. So now I have that stickman structure for the arms. And let's do the same thing for the legs too. Dot at the knee, connect that line, dot at the other knee, connect that line. I'm not going to go through the hand there just because I'll want to be able to draw it later and that'll confuse me. Dot at the ankle, connect that line, dot at this ankle, connect this line. All right, so now I can come back over to my armature here, my structure here. First I'm going to figure out where these dots go. Like I said, we're not looking for absolute perfection at this point. If we wanted to, you remember those measuring skills that we practiced earlier on? We're measuring with this. You can actually line up the tip of your pencil with that dot, your thumbnail here, just like you did with the graphing or with the grid drawing, just like you did with all those measurement practices that we did. So this is a skill that you can continue to use no matter what. It just keeps going. It's a gift that keeps on giving. So that's if you want it to be exact, or as exact as you can get it at this stage. To make it sight size, or the exact size that this is, which is a totally good way to do it at this point. It takes a number of the guessing kind of out of it. So I'm actually just going to continue on with that. I'm going to just check my length here, make sure that that's a good length. Yeah, that's a good length. Okay, and then kind of going from my action line here over to this, get my hip joint there, and over here on this side. So now I have these, and I can start adding on my arms. And now I can measure again to get down to that elbow point. Then I can draw my line, connecting them. Then I can check. Remember how we check those angles? Check, moving it over. This one's tough to check with. You can also use a ruler. Or if you still have those barbecue skewers that we were working with earlier on, those are good too. Yeah, see, I thought that was off. That's a little bit too much of an angle. So all of these skills that we learn, whether it's, for one thing or another, we almost always come back to them. All the skills help each other out. And I'm going to draw this one up here. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to move a little faster here because I don't want to spend too much time building things out. And this comes down. Do you see how that comes down? I'm paying attention to all of these different guides as I go along, and how they interact with each other. And a lot of what we've been doing over the past couple of weeks between the grid drawing, the measurement practice, really is just a matter of training our eyes to see things, to be able to see the angles, to be able to see the distances, so that we have the option of being more accurate. And then this final leg over here, that kind of connects to this, and then comes down. I want to double check that. Yeah, that's looking all right. Okay, and then I'm going to draw out just a generic sort of triangle shape for foot here. Now, here's something I really want to show you. Watch this. I'm going to check this angle. We're going to come back to this a lot, actually, later on. But for right now, just to check and see how one part that's far away relates to each other. I can do that pretty easily just by measuring that angle right there. All right, so yeah, that was not too far off there. Make my foot. All right, so far so good. Well, let's give him a head. Poor Titus. Forget to give him a head. All right. So right now this looks kind of odd. Because it's a dynamic pose. It's a part, it's got foreshortening. It's got a lot going on in it, which makes it a little bit trickier. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start building out that volume. We're going to start by creating the rib cage. Now his torso is compressed here. It's a little bit shorter because he's leaning forward. So it's going to be a little bit odd. But his rib cage probably comes down to actually about right here. And then he's leaning forward slightly. So that's kind of coming back. So it's going to seem a little closer here. This action line is generally going to be right along the sternum, which is the front part of that rib cage. So here, leave room for the ball and socket joints for the shoulder. Paying attention to this width here at the same time. Okay, good. So now we've got our rib cage. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to map out. See, this is too high. Really, honestly, that leg bone comes in closer to here, but I'm just sort of looking at the top of it from what I can see. So probably the leg bone, if we were actually drawing the skeleton, would be more like this. But we're not worried about that so much right now. So just draw sort of I'm just going to kind of put this is just going to be where the shorts kind of come across, and then I'm not going to worry too much about anything else. Let's draw out a basic shape for the hand here, basic shape for the hand here. All I'm doing is I'm looking at just the outside shape of it. I'm not trying to draw a hand. So in this case, I mean, it's just a wonky rectangle, essentially. Going across. And then because we can develop further from there. All right, so we've got a good base to our figure now at this point. This is exactly what we did last week, just with the limbs in a different portion, in a different way, which is actually what we kind of did the week before. So now let's start adding some volume. And at this point, I'm just going to pay attention to, I'm not going to draw in kind of the balloons that we were doing last week. I'm just going to sort of pay attention to the curves a little bit. So what I see is this arm kind of curves down here and attaches to the outside of the torso right there. And I'm just going to bring that down, looking at this angle here, bringing it down over here. Comes out a little bit. There's like a little pocket of the shorts right there. It curves. Just keep in mind that bodies are all made up of convex curves. That means they push outwards. They don't push inwards. Making that rounded curve here, picking up to where the shorts hit, right above the knee, here. Then I'm going to go ahead and erase right there. So instead of like developing the whole structure and then putting clothes on like we did last week, I'm just sort of going along. The clothes are kind of developing with, because I'm looking at something. I'm not just making a, I'm not making, kind of making something up. And it's much easier when you're just looking at something to just draw what you see. So I'm paying attention to the short stretch here. Other side of the leg comes in over here, curves outward. That's the calf muscle. Down to the ankle. Knee comes in. That's a little hard to see because I have a lot of lines on there. So we'll just sort of put that in. Okay. It looks like the shorts needs to come out a little bit here. In there. All right. Coming along here, adding a little bit of extra side to there. Now here on the arm, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to draw this whole shape here. This is because I know that the elbow crease is right there. Down, turning in. Then I'm just going to follow that bit of a curve there. So really, we did all those balloons last time, but you can actually simplify the process quite a bit if you skip out those balloons and you just sort of kind of create a cylinder around your stick. You just want it to have a curve to it. You don't want it to be straight like this, because then you'll end up, it just won't look like there's muscle underneath there. And so you want to have kind of a curve, and you can look at the reference to see how things curve. And again, guys, not looking for perfection. We are just starting this, so you do your best, and I will be absolutely very happy with your best. And then this kind of curves in. Actually, I need to bring that up a little bit more. Comes up to the shoulder. You see how the shoulder slopes? This is part of that. He's kind of lunging forward, and so I might need to bring the chin down, because the chin's actually going to kind of come across there. So always, always, always be looking back at your reference material, paying close attention to how every aspect kind of relates to the other ones. Then connecting there, and I'm just going to go ahead and leave the funky triangle hands. Now, if this is where you end up on this drawing, you don't get any further, I will be just ecstatic. If you just end up with just the structure, that's totally fine too. If you're really kind of enjoying it, you want to keep going, you can keep going. And at this point, you would go ahead and you'd start erasing those structure lines because you don't need them anymore. You've got your drawing down, and so we don't need all of these interior lines anymore. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of them and add in just a few more details. I'm going to add in like the wrinkles of the clothes, because the wrinkles of the clothes are actually, they're very important for showing movement. All right, so I mean already we've got a pretty decent kind of shape that looks okay. It looks fairly similar to what we're doing. We're going to go ahead, I'm going to grab, need to create this shape here that's the neck and the neckline to the shirt. Go ahead and the sleeves here. And you can just kind of make curves like that to indicate the folds in the fabric. Just pay attention to see how it stretches across the body there. That is going to create a lot of a sense of movement. Comes down, paying attention to that line here, comes down, comes up again, over across. Okay, stretching across, the legs are moving, and there we go. All right, now next week we're going to work on mapping out the facial features. So I'm going to just kind of give you a quick look, kind of a prequel here, and then we'll get into that more next week. But just going to map across. That's where the eyebrows are. That's where the nose would end. That's where the mouth is going to be. Creating the eye socket here, the ocular cavity, just by putting a little bit of shading into it. And then his messy hair. He needs a haircut. But we can't get haircuts because all the places are closed. Okay, all right, so attached to the assignment are a number of pictures. Go ahead and print one off. You want to, print up a photo of your favorite basketball player or volleyball player, dancer, gymnast, whatever. Go ahead and do that too. You just want to double check and make sure that these kind of lines are clear, that you'll be able to map out these shapes. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.